I'm talking to you that are facing a financial challenge. I have news for you. It's not a problem with God.
After 50 years of claiming God spoke directly to him, raising over $100 million in donations, facing fraud allegations from his own nephew, and enduring an IRS raid that seized hundreds of boxes of financial records, 73-year-old Benny Hinn shocked the televangelist world. Standing before a camera, he admitted he could not keep silent any longer and said he was finally ready to reveal everything. The walls are finally closing in. In April of 2026, a Texas court ordered a bank to seize money directly from the accounts of Benny Hinn Ministries after a printing company called Print Mail Pro proved that the ministry had refused to pay for thousands of fundraising mailers produced between January and May of 2025. Judge John P. Chupp ruled the organization owed over $144,000 in damages, plus $64.93 for every single day the debt remained unpaid, plus all legal fees. When the ministry continued ignoring the ruling, the court issued a writ of garnishment that authorized Frost Bank in San Antonio to hand over $159,000 of the ministry's money directly to the printing company. What makes that court order so devastating is the pattern it exposed, because this was the second time in 5 years that a court had to force the ministry to pay a company for services the ministry itself requested. In 2021, a federal court ordered the ministry to pay over $3 million to Mail America Communications after the company proved the ministry had been falling behind on payments since 2006, accumulating more than $5.6 million in unpaid bills. Before that, telemarketing firm Infocision won $1.8 million in court in 2014, then sued again in 2018 for constructive fraud, after the ministry defaulted on payments it had already agreed to make. And just months before the bank's seizure, in November of 2025, his wife Suzanne finalized their divorce for the second time. They married in 1979, divorced in 2010, remarried at the Holy Land Experience in 2013 before 1,000 guests, and then Suzanne filed again in July of 2024 after they had been living 60 miles apart. His attorney called it extremely amicable, which is a remarkable word for a man who preached that God restores marriages while his own collapsed, was rebuilt, and collapsed all over again. The ministry even sold DVDs of the remarriage ceremony for $25 each, turning the wedding into another revenue stream before the second divorce was even on the horizon. But this man knew the most damaging secrets about the entire operation was not the IRS, not his ex-wife, but a member of his own family who had grown up inside the ministry and was about to tell the world everything. The nephew and the prophecies that never came true. Costi Hinn is Benny Hinn's nephew, and he did not observe the ministry from the outside. He grew up inside it, traveled with his uncle, worked the crusades, saw the private jets and the luxury hotels, watched the screeners block the genuinely sick from reaching the stage, and witnessed the fundraising machinery that converted human desperation into corporate revenue. In a documentary by CBC's The Fifth Estate, Costi described the entire operation as a Ponzi scheme where the only person getting rich was the man at the top. In a later interview with investigative journalist Julie Roys, he called it a money-making mafia and revealed that family members who tried to leave the organization received death threats against themselves, their spouses, and their children. In July of 2019, Costi published God, Greed, and the Prosperity Gospel, tracing his uncle's obsession with wealth back to a childhood wound, their grandfather telling young Benny he would never amount to anything, and describing how that rejection became the engine driving a 50-year career of exploiting vulnerable people. Costi detailed fake miracles as standard procedure, exposed the contrast between the family's luxury lifestyle and the poverty of donors, and described giving to God as the manufactured sales pitch used to extract money, the supposed secret to job promotions and financial breakthroughs, all designed to keep the donations flowing. But Costi's revelations about the family business were only one part of the story, because his uncle had spent decades making predictions in the explicit name of God that turned out to be spectacularly and verifiably wrong. On New Year's Eve of 1989, Hinn told his Orlando congregation that the Holy Spirit revealed Fidel Castro would die in the 90s, that God would destroy the homosexual community of America with fire by 1995, and that a devastating earthquake would hit the East Coast before 2000. Castro lived until 2016. The fire never came. The earthquake never happened. In 1993, he predicted the rapture within 6 years. In 1999, he appeared on TBN and told viewers that families would place the hands of their dead loved ones on television screens and watch them return to life. Every single prophecy he ever attributed to God speaking into his ear was completely wrong, and he has never publicly repented of a single one of them. And the investigations that followed would reveal that the miracles he sold to millions of desperate believers were being manufactured by a system designed to make sure the genuinely sick never got anywhere near the stage. The machine behind the miracles. The Canadian investigative series, The Fifth Estate, used hidden cameras inside Hinn's crusades and exposed a system that was methodical and ruthless in controlling which people the audience saw being healed. The most desperate attendees, the quadriplegics, the brain-damaged, anyone with a visibly serious physical condition, were never allowed on stage. Staff members called screeners intercepted them in the audience and directed them back to their seats before they could reach the healing line. At one service, hidden cameras captured a mother carrying her muscular dystrophy-stricken daughter being stopped by 2 screeners as she tried to get through. And the child who needed a miracle more than anyone in that arena was the one person guaranteed never to receive one. The people on stage were self-selected, meaning they came forward based on emotional responses to Hinn's announcements that God was healing people in the crowd. He always started with invisible, unverifiable conditions like diabetes or depression, and receptive audience members who believed they had been healed walked forward without being examined before or after. Neuroscientists who studied his methods for an HBO documentary titled A Question of Miracles described the technique as mass hypnosis and drew comparisons to crowd manipulation used by totalitarian leaders. That documentary followed 7 supposedly healed individuals for a full year and concluded that not a single one had actually been healed, with director Anthony Thomas telling the New York Times that the Crusades did more damage to Christianity than most committed atheists ever could, and the damage went far beyond broken faith. On September 18, 1986, a woman named Ella Peppard fell during a crusade, and when an usher rushed to help, Hinn told the usher to leave her alone because God would heal her. And Peppard died from a blood clot caused by the fall. In May of 2000, a 4-month-old baby died during a Hinn crusade in Nairobi, Kenya. At a sold-out rally in Manchester, England, more than 2,000 people abandoned their medications in anticipation of a miracle and were left without care after the event ended. Dateline NBC asked the ministry to verify 56 healings from a Las Vegas crusade, and after repeated requests, the ministry sent 5 cases from other events, 4 of which could not provide medical records, and the 5th involving a woman whose own neurologist suspected she never had the disease she claimed to be cured of. When asked about the verification problem, Hinn said, "God never called me to verify," and that he was not a doctor. Meanwhile, United States Senate was about to find out exactly where the $100 million a year in donations from those desperate believers was actually going. $100 million and nowhere to hide. At its peak, the ministry brought in over $100 million a year, and Hinn's lifestyle reflected every dollar. He lived in a $5 million mansion in Dana Point, California, flew on private jets, stayed in hotels costing thousands per night, earned over $500,000 in annual salary, and wore custom suits and expensive jewelry while telling impoverished believers that their financial breakthrough was one seed offering away. In 1999, he abandoned his congregation at the Orlando Christian Center and announced that God ordered him to build a $30 million World Healing Center in Irving, Texas. Donations flooded in from people who believed their money would create a place where God's power would heal anyone who walked through the doors. But that healing center was never built, and the millions raised for it vanished into the ministry's operations without any accounting ever provided to the donors who funded it. In 2007, Senator Chuck Grassley launched a Senate Finance Committee investigation into 6 televangelists, including Hinn, and the 61-page final report raised questions about church-owned airplanes, luxury homes, and credit cards used for personal expenses, with boards packed full of relatives rubber-stamping every decision. Hinn exploited a loophole most people have never heard of, calling his organization World Healing Center Church, despite having no congregation or membership, which let it avoid filing IRS Form 990 and shield its finances from public scrutiny. In 2005, a Trinity Foundation investigator found IRS audit documents in a dumpster outside Hinn's law firm. 12 years later, IRS criminal investigators raided the Grapevine, Texas headquarters and removed hundreds of boxes of financial records. And in January of 2016, Trinity Broadcasting Network, the platform that made Benny Hinn a household name, stopped airing his show entirely. Federal agents were carrying boxes of financial evidence out of his headquarters. The television network that built him had cut him off. And across the Atlantic Ocean, a tabloid photographer in Rome was capturing photographs that would expose a secret relationship and destroy his marriage in front of the entire world. Rome and the relationship that shattered everything. In February of 2010, Suzanne Hinn filed for divorce after 30 years, and Hinn later admitted that she had been struggling with an addiction to prescription medications and that he had been so consumed by the ministry that he forgot about his family. But the addiction and the neglect were not even the real bombshell, because just months later, the National Enquirer published photographs of Benny Hinn and fellow televangelist Paula White leaving a 5-star hotel in Rome, holding hands. The tabloid reported they spent 3 nights in a hotel Hinn booked under a false name, and the photos were obtained in the same manner the Enquirer had used to catch Senator John Edwards with his mistress, suggesting someone inside the inner circle had tipped off the photographers. Both issued denials, but at a crusade in Oakland, California, Hinn's story shifted as he admitted a friendship had developed with White, then claimed the Vatican had made him a patron of the arts, and that he invited White along so she could donate money to maintain the Vatican's art collections. "That was stupid on my part," he told the crowd, "and for that, I do ask forgiveness." His publisher, Strang Communications, founded by Steve Strang, who had been at Hinn's wedding, sued him for $250,000, alleging he violated the morality clause in his book contract. According to the lawsuit, Hinn had privately admitted the inappropriate relationship and agreed to return a $300,000 advance, but never did. The couple reconciled and remarried in 2013 at the Holy Land Experience before 1,000 guests, and the ministry sold DVDs of the wedding for $25 each. That second marriage lasted just over a decade before Suzanne filed again. And during their second marriage, the couple acquired at least $4.7 million in real estate, while the ministry was simultaneously defaulting on payments to its own vendors. His marriage had collapsed twice. His publisher had sued him. The Rome photographs had been seen around the world, and the pressure from every direction was building toward a moment that would arrive in September of 2019, when Benny Hinn would go on live broadcast and deliver a confession so explosive that it made headlines on every major news outlet on Earth. The confession that fooled the world. On September 2nd of 2019, just 2 months after his nephew Costi had published the book calling the ministry a fraud, Benny Hinn appeared on a Facebook Live broadcast and told his followers that prosperity had gone a little crazy, that he was correcting his own theology, that placing a price on the gospel was an offense to the Holy Spirit, and that giving had become such a gimmick it made him sick. He declared he would never again ask followers to give $1,000 or any specific amount. And the line that went global was when he said he frankly did not care what people thought about him anymore. Christianity Today, Relevant Magazine, CNN, and outlets around the world covered it as a genuine theological reckoning from one of the most powerful voices in the prosperity gospel movement. But within 48 hours, Hinn was back on camera asking for donations. His website kept promising financial blessings to faithful givers, and buried in the same broadcast where he renounced the prosperity gospel, he also said he still believed in prosperity and that the message of prosperity was in the Bible, completely undermining the confession he had just delivered. He had pulled the identical move in 2018 after Billy Graham's death, admitting he went too far and then walking it back when the cameras moved on. In 2024, theology producer Mike Winger released a documentary on YouTube compiling years of evidence, including the failed prophecies, contradictions in Hinn's own conversion story, and testimony from people harmed by the Crusades. Hinn's ministry filed multiple copyright takedown requests, and YouTube denied them twice, ruling the content was protected by fair use. The attempt to bury the evidence through legal intimidation backfired in full public view. His confession collapsed in 48 hours. His attempt to silence the documentary failed. His website was still promising blessings to donors while his bank accounts were being seized by Texas courts. And the question that remained was not whether Benny Hinn had deceived the millions who trusted him, but why. After everything that had been exposed, the system that protected him for 50 years was still standing. The system that built him and still protects him. As of 2026, the machine continues to operate out of Grapevine, Texas. The website still promises blessings, and Benny Hinn still collects money from people who believe their sacrifice will be divinely rewarded. The empire is smaller, weaker, running on court orders and a fraction of its former donor base, but it has not stopped. And that refusal to stop reveals something that no confession or investigation has been able to change. Because genuine faith reconsiders when every prophecy fails, genuine faith pauses when people die at your events, and genuine faith breaks when your own family calls you a con artist on national television. What does not break under that kind of evidence is a business model, because a business model does not need to believe in anything. It only needs people willing to pay. And for 50 years, Benny Hinn has never run out of those people. Somewhere right now, there is a grandmother sending money she cannot afford to lose because a man on a screen promised her that God would multiply it back. And somewhere right now, there is a sick person refusing medical treatment because they believe a miracle is coming. And those are the human consequences that every Senate investigation and IRS raid and court ruling has so far failed to prevent. The reason those consequences continue is not because Benny Hinn is uniquely talented at deception, but because he operates inside a system that was designed to protect men exactly like him. The tax code loophole that lets organizations call themselves churches without having a congregation or filing public financial disclosures has not been closed. The television networks that replaced TBN still broadcast prosperity preachers without scrutiny, and the cultural taboo that treats questioning a man of God as a greater offense than the lies that man tells in God's name has not gone away. That is the real story of Benny Hinn at 73, not the story of one man's greed, but the story of a system so rigged in favor of religious leaders that even after an IRS raid, a Senate investigation, 2 divorces, a nephew calling you a fraud on camera, bank accounts seized by court order, people dying at your events, every prophecy proven wrong, and a confession that lasted less than 2 days, you can still keep the doors open and keep collecting money from people who can least afford to give it. Drop a comment and tell us which part of this story hit you the hardest. And let us know whether you believe the system that protected Benny Hinn for 50 years will ever actually be forced to change.